Welcome to Get to Know with me, Morgan Williams. I've been in the creative industry for over a decade and meet people in different roles every day. But here's my secret. I don't always know what it is they actually do. So here I am getting to know. Each week, I sit down with industry insiders, learning what it is they actually do all day long. Whether you're trying to break into the industry, feeling a little bit lost, or just plain curious, Get to Know is here to dish out creative career insights and advice. So let's dive right into this episode. This week, I get to know Phie McKenzie, a social strategist and the founder of Creative Ally, a purpose-driven talent agency. Like me, Phie grew up in Wales and moved to the big city with dreams of being a journalist and landed the job as an editor at Notion magazine. This sparks her passion of working with and supporting talent. In this episode, Phie tells me all about her career journey, how she got involved in social media and what it's like being a founder. If you're interested in social media or working with talent, this is the episode for you. Before we start this episode, I have something really exciting to announce. We're throwing our first ever networking event to celebrate the end of season 1 of this podcast. If you've enjoyed any of the episodes, join me and a selection of my guests at Fujifilm House of Photography in London on September 19th for a fun evening of connecting with fellow creatives. Whether you're an industry veteran or just starting out, this event is open to all and the perfect chance to expand your network. Don't miss out, grab your free ticket on Eventbrite, link in bio. Hi Phie, thanks for coming on. So nice to see you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so nice to be here.
I'm glad to have another Welshie on the podcast, actually.
Yes, I feel like my accent is going to come through a lot stronger on this because
probably both of ours, actually. We'll bring it out of each other. So maybe if we start from Wales, because I guess creative-wise, even though I think a lot of Welsh people are really creative, there's not much in terms of creative industry in Wales. So how did you really get your start in the industry?
So, I mean, back then, it was quite difficult. I've got to say, like growing up, I didn't necessarily see that many people working in kind of creative jobs in Wales. So there's a lot of emphasis on drama and, sort of drama, theatre, and also kind of choirs, singing. But I didn't necessarily see so much of it when I was growing up, but I was always like super drawn to it. So I was super drawn to like the media. I was super drawn to, I guess it was like that kind of that magic of the creative industries that just felt maybe a little bit like sort of further away. I was really captivated when I was younger by drama. And did drama all the way through school. Did drama on the weekends. Did a bit of extra work as well when I was younger. Had like an agent, and I guess that was like maybe the first time I had really, I got sort of close to that industry. And sort of part of that is loving drama is also like loving literature, loving writing, and that was something I always wanted to do when I was younger. So I read so much. I read furiously. Like I finished pages and pages and pages like so quickly. And I dreamed of being the sort of Carrie Bradshaw journalist.
Brilliant.
Yeah, really, that's like something I always wanted to do. So it was kind of sort of set in me. I knew I wanted to do something like in the media. I was, super interested in that. I was like, I love literature. I also love, journalism. I just saw myself as this kind of, Welsh Carrie Bradshaw type in like a big city. So that's something I kind of always wanted to do. And that kind of set me on the path to, studying like English, studying drama. But I got to the end of school, and I felt like I wasn't necessarily ready. So I actually took a bit of a gap year before heading into uni. When I went to uni, I studied like all these, I studied English, I studied drama, I did English linguistics, language, psycholinguistics, and I'd really like sort of chosen the wrong kind of like courses, the wrong location. I was like up in Manchester.
Okay.
After like a year or so, it wasn't. I've realized it just wasn't the place to be. So I decided, like, I wanted to be up in London. I felt like that was the place for me that was going to be, that's going to hold these was holding my creative dreams, and that I was going to find like opportunity there. So I ended up contacting like goldsmiths through like clearing, and getting onto their media and communication course,
Oh, amazing.
which meant that I could, sort of study like a bit of everything, kind of media theory. I could study, media practice as well. We had like an insight into like lots of different areas. So, radio journalism, creative writing, script writing, and digital design. So that was like, meant that I could really sort of try out a few different ways into the industry, if that makes sense. While I was at uni, I was super hungry and super ambitious to kind of get ahead and, these in the industry. And I did so many internships when I was studying. So, like PR internships, I did kind of editorial internships, a lot of like working for free. And, a lot of like kind of like bad experiences, a lot of experiences that probably I didn't necessarily need to do, but I felt like that was the only kind of like way into the industry. Like I'm not from like a family where there's a lot of creative people before me. So my mum is a care worker. My stepdad was a fruit and veg delivery person, so wasn't necessarily glam, definitely didn't have like the connections to the creative industry. So for me it was about trying to get as many opportunities as I could, and that kind of actually led on to the pathway which would like ignite my career. A friend's sister was working for a magazine. She was interning for a magazine called Notion, and she called me one day and said, "Oh, they're looking for writers for their new issue." And she like connected me with the owner, Billy, at the time, and I went to have a job interview, and it sounded like a really exciting role. It was like it was kind of unusual. It was like the magazine Notion, so it's a music and fashion title, aimed at like young people, youth culture. At the time, it'd been running for I think maybe like 10 years or so, but it had, it sort of folded, and the owner was kind of bringing it back after like a bit of a hiatus and was looking for writers. So I joined the team, and that path then would then take me into like the sort of, I guess, like the career I ended up having for sort of 4 or 5 years. So moving into the role of like digital editor, and then the role of editor of the print mag as well.
That's awesome. I think I was like you. I sort of did every internship that I could do just to get experience and see what it was like. And I definitely did some that I didn't really need to do. Like I went and worked in Wonderland as more of like a styling assistant,
Right.
whereas I wanted to go into photography. So it wasn't really the right thing to do, but I just wanted to see how it worked in magazines and, like how they work and find their talent, to shoot the campaigns and how they actually work for magazines. So it's kind of interesting that we sort of did a kind of similar path, but then you ended up going into the magazine full time,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously ended up as editor, which is obviously quite a big role within a magazine. So what does that role actually entail as an editor?
Yeah. Okay. So before I say this, I'm just going to make a point about your last your last point. So the I think we did a lot of like internships. I think it's really good to do internships, right? At like at different
Definitely.
roles. But I feel like our generation, we didn't necessarily, we weren't exposed to the like job titles and what they meant. I think
No.
it was like it was really like inaccessible, and so you had to kind of do, unless you knew somebody in that job, you kind of really had to do these like do your own research and be an intern or work for free at these different places. So yeah, really needs to, the creative industries really needs to be kind of more accessible and transparent. So this is great for this podcast. So role as editor. So to be honest, like I would say this particular role as editor would probably be quite different to many other titles, or many other establishments. So we were a really small team. We were like, maybe 4, maximum 5, maybe like 10 at the very, very most. And the role of editor really is to help kind of steer the strategic direction of the magazine, ensure that we're reaching our audience with compelling like content or compelling articles, interviews that are going to really engage our audience. So we had a really small team, and it meant that role of editor was like, sometimes it was kind of the last job that I was doing, because we were picking up lots of different roles at the same time. We were helping produce like a shoot, we were talking to brands, or like pitching ideas to brands. We might be like the studio manager, or I might be the studio manager, making sure like a shoot went well, or we had a really amazing place to shoot an artist. So it was really, really varied, which I absolutely loved. Like it was like one of the best jobs ever, but it definitely wasn't just like a traditional editor role. Like you as such a small team back then, like you really had to kind of get stuck in and be involved in everything. And I think like, because I was so invested in the magazine had been on hiatus, we relaunched it, and we started getting like a lot more engagement with our audiences. Our social following went up. Oh, that's another role that I was doing as well, like doing the social media, the Instagram, the Twitter, because we were getting this like bit of a buzz, and like we felt like we were onto something. I was so invested in making that like a success. And so you do everything you can to make that possible. So it was lots and lots of late nights sitting at the computer for like hours and hours. I'd say like probably a traditional role of like an editor would be, they're in charge of like the editorial content. So in charge of they're researching ideas around sort of, whether it be kind of current stories, whether it be current music, current like gaming, whatever your kind of like focus is, and pulling out the stories that are going to really interest people, and pique their audiences and potential other audiences' interest. So it's lots of research, it's it's planning content, it's reaching out to people to interview, it's commissioning content, so getting other writers involved, to take on a piece. And that was like one of my favorite things, actually. It was like finding somebody who was really passionate about a particular music scene or a particular artist, and then going to them and saying like, hey, would you be up for writing like a piece on this person? And because we how special it is to gain those kind of like milestones that sort of set you up for your career and stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, you as well. You can relate to that as well when you get to work with a particular talent or artist.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we met on set at Notion for. I mean, I did sort of behind the scenes for a couple of the shoots, but you got some amazing talent in at the time. Like, just off the top of my head, the ones that I met was like Little Mix, Sigma, Shawn Mendes. Like, they were really massive at that period of time. So obviously, you were really good at getting that talent in, and I think that's set you up then for what you've gone on to do, because you consistently like work with new talent and try and find those talents in the industry now as well. And I guess it's more through, not so much like the celebs, but it's more through the creative talent. So like you're saying, like journalists, photographers, those types of talents, which is super interesting, and I want to definitely talk more about that. So you went from Notion, where I guess you got a lot of the different experience. Like you were saying, it sounds like you had sort of fingers in multiple pies, like learning about photo shoots and kind of how they all work, as well as all the social media, as well as everything that you needed to do for a print publication. So What did you do after Notion? How did that experience set you up for what you went into next?
So I ended up moving to a company called Studio 71. So Studio
Mhm.
71 is it's a global media company, and they specialize really in working with digital creators. So they have offices in Berlin, LA, London at the time, like Paris, and their specialty was working with YouTube influencers. So it would be, managing these creators. They would, all these creators would be part of something called a multi-channel network. So it would mean that they're all plugged into YouTube on a particular network. They would benefit from better like AdSense deals, and be kind of looked after by the YouTube team.
Mhm.
So how I got into that, I guess like Notion gave me a really good understanding around, strategy. I didn't necessarily know the kind of the word at the time really, or like, its kind of significance. It gave me a really great understanding of like strategy and build a plan how to market yourself in a way that is going to, reach new audiences, that is going to really engage like different different communities, and it gave me a good understanding about the idea of brand and branding, about how you kind of like show up in any kind of space, what your visual ID looks like, what is your tone of voice, how you appear to people in your not just people but competitors, like whichever space that you kind of enter. So I heard about Studio 71, who were looking for a particular person to come on board and be their brand and communication. The what was I remember what's it called? I ended up being head of communication, but I went to be a brand manager. So the company had only recently started like a UK office, so
Mhm.
they wanted somebody to come on board and just basically help translate the global brand into kind of a more local market. So obviously I
Right.
had kind of like communications, editorial experience, had the kind of I guess sort of self-taught marketing experience, and they they luckily kind of they saw that I was like really really connected to kind of to the creative scene, to youth culture, and they decided to hire me, and bring me on board as their brand manager. So that company was like amazing actually, because it gave me a really like incredible insight into lots of different kind of areas. So it's quite a confusing kind of business model, but basically it had this, it looked after YouTube talent, but it also had this production arm, which was, it made podcasts and it made TV programs using digital talent. So up and coming faces that hadn't been seen on TV before, and creating quite amazing concepts, highlighting issues such as, let's say like, stigma busting around kind of like sex, or making programs around, I don't know, like sort of gaming programs for young people, which just wasn't like there at the time.
Mhm.
And it also had like an influence marketing side as well. So it's quite like a unique business. And like being in the company when it was like quite small, I got to kind of grow with it and like really understand these like lots of these different roles. And as obviously the company grew, so did my expertise, my seniority, and ended up being promoted to like head of brand and communications there. So working across kind of for the company's PR, of their their sort of like corporate PR, their production PR. So anything to do with their TV programs, their digital programs, and their podcasts. And as part of that as well, like it was one of those. It was actually amazing because my my boss at the time, he could see that I still had this kind of hunger to learn and to do more, and it kind of allowed me to kind of flex into spaces which maybe a traditional big agency wouldn't have allowed me to do. So I was working with the creative team on sharing ideas, for example, and providing some like creative strategy for their like podcasting, and invited into those kind of meetings where I think most traditional companies might not allow that.
Yeah, I guess it sounds like you've worked in a lot of, maybe startup's not the right word, but it's that early stages where a lot of things are kind of going on, so you've got to get involved a lot, but obviously that's really helped you out in your experience.
Yeah, do you know what? It has, and at times I've thought that it hasn't, because when you kind of do a little bit of everything, um, and I would say like I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I would say like the standard of my work is really high. But
Mhm,
I think when you're doing a bit of everything, people don't see you as a specialist in something,
mhm,
and maybe you might be overlooked. It depends on how you can communicate your skill sets, and sort of back yourself, because I think I've often been kind of like overlooked for opportunities, even though I just know I would have been like the right person for that, because you're maybe you don't have specific experience in one particular area, and you
mhm.
have like quite broad and hybrid experience. But I think like now, obviously, with what I do now, that's given me it's given me so much experience and like understanding around the industry, or a lot of like multiple industries really. And like I still have a lot of people that will call me and say, hey, I need X for this kind of project, or what would you recommend for this, and I can still kind of provide that insight. So it is good, but it does come with like negatives as well. I remember when like applying for jobs, and recruiters said to me, I just don't get it. Like I don't get what you do, and like what your specialism is. So
I
um
guess it depends like where you actually want to go in your career, isn't it? Like if you do want to stay in that sort of corporate role, like linear journey, then maybe it's not the best thing, because like you said, recruiters just won't understand, and then they can't really help get you the roles that you want to do, that you can do, because I don't know, there's too many sort of things going on, and like you said, you're not seen as a specialist. But if you want to go down the route that I guess you've taken, which is starting your own business, and I guess it's kind of like calling the shots yourself, and having a wide breadth of experience is then super helpful, because you can actually, right at the beginning anyway, do it all somewhat yourself, and then you can start to bring in those people then to help strengthen certain areas. So I think it just depends on what you want to do in your journey.
I totally agree. I also think there's an element of if you are set up in like a linear role, you are more likely, I believe, to get those pay increases, those incremental pay increases.
Mhm,
Whereas I think if you have more of a kind of like, I was what to say, like a squiggly career, it's
mhm.
it might be hard, especially if you're stepping kind of sideways into like
Yeah.
a role rather than stepping forwards. So I guess like I don't know if I do it differently, but if I was a bit more kind of money savvy, maybe what I would have done is like excel in one pathway in a linear fashion, get those pay rises, move ahead, and then have that, you kind of like your worth, because you're getting those,
Yeah.
you're getting that pay packet, right? Or you're
Yeah.
getting a certain level of financial income. So where I think like if you're doing like that squiggly career, that side jumping, whatever, I think it can be quite difficult, because you might not be on the wage that you should be on, because
Mhm.
you're not moving, who knows, you might do. Sometimes, if you're able to kind of back yourself, like I said, and negotiate, and you kind of know your worth, that obviously it's easier. But I think especially when you're kind of younger, I think it can be quite difficult.
Yeah. I think as well though that it depends, it just depends what type of person you are. Like for me, I came out of uni and I got a full-time job in a family portrait studio, and then I became their studio manager. So I was on like quite a good wage as studio manager there, but I knew it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to go freelance. Went freelance, earned like no money for several years, pretty much. And then swallowed my pride, went and got a job at Domino's because I had no money. And then went to ASOS, then got my role there. And then I've managed to sort of go sort of up pay wise with my sort of roles from there. But I mean, you know, a lot of people do a bit of a squiggly career, and if money's not your end goal, and you don't mind taking that pay cut just to do something that you just really are interested in and want to do, then who's to say you're wrong, isn't it? It's not all about money.
No, it's definitely not all about money for sure. I mean, it's, sometimes I've lived on very, very low wages for
Yeah,
like long periods of time. I bet you can guess which jobs they were. But I don't know. I'm just that person who I really need to love what I do. I really am like driven by like purpose and feeling like I'm making a meaningful contribution to
Mhm,
whatever work I'm doing. Am I
mhm.
helping to highlight an issue that isn't talked about much? Am I championing a type of artist or talent who doesn't get to be seen or heard in sort of mainstream media? Like I need to be doing that. Like it's like definitely to my detriment. And sometimes my partner says to me like, "Babe, you could just go and always get a corporate job," But I just can't. I just can't. I've got to like love what I do because I actually love working. I love like I love like feeling like my day is full of something I like really enjoy doing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess somewhat related, you talked about being a little bit sort of self-taught in the social media area. How important do you think the self-taught areas are? And do you think that hiring managers really look at that in like a positive light?
So I would say, like, especially with social media, self-teaching is everything. Like you can, study a degree, you can, do the online courses, whatever, but like social changes every day, and
Mhm.
social is about the tech, right? So it's about like what is available like on the app, whichever app you're using, but it's also about like what's happening culturally and what's like how you can like respond to that. So I think social media. You definitely do not need to. It's good to like be aware of like case studies and examples of social being used well. Or somebody like nailing this strategy, or using amazing creators or whatever. But like social is like so about being like self-taught. You've got to be in it to win it. Like
Mhm.
you know. Um, it's where you see culture being kind of reflected. It's where you see different trends and opinions kind of popping up. Like it is about being on it. And I'm far too much on social, to be honest. Like how much I spend on Instagram and TikTok a day, like gross. But you've got to be in it. If you're away from it for a few days or so, like things have changed. Like people start using the apps differently. It's not just about, putting a reel up. It's like how you create the reels, how you edit it, what
Yeah.
sounds you use. It's like, utilizing the stickers in an app, or, it's like social changes like daily. So you just got to be in it. I think like, I think I'm a little bit older than you, but I've got friends who they haven't downloaded TikTok for some reason, and now they're just not savvy on it. Like you
Mhm.
have to be using the apps, and you have to be like on board. Like not saying you have to be on, you have to spend a great amount of time every day, but you've got to be, you know, aware and venturing into these apps to not feel kind of left behind. Otherwise, it's like a huge community you're not a part of.
Yeah.
You're being like kind of left behind technologically. So yeah, self-teaching is everything. When it comes to like hiring managers, I don't know. I think more and more people kind of waking up to the fact that you don't need to have 20,000 followers to be like a social media manager or to prove your worth. You just need to understand culture, social media, you be aware of what's happening around you. I think people are more are coming around to that idea more, but I wish they would just like kind of understands that it is like a whole like language that you have to know, and that means being self-taught. And if you create content for other people, for example, or maybe like, I don't know, your friends, say you're trying to get into the industry, like you filming content on your phone at somebody's gig, and creating like a little reel, or creating some stuff on Canva for their socials is great experience. Rather than somebody taking like an online course. Obviously, I think like metrics, like understanding analytics, understanding insights and data is really important. But depending on which role you go into, that might not be as important.
Yeah. And I know you're not a social media manager, but have been really involved in like social strategy. And like you say, it changes pretty much every day. How do you actually get a social strategy together?
How do you get social strategy together? So so I worked. So when I left Studio 71, I worked as a digital strategist. So because obviously I really understood social creators, the like kind of ecosphere. I then went into brands and helped them with their digital strategy. So
Mhm.
um, I can talk about that a bit later, but social strategy really is basically the A to B of your plan, right? So
Mhm.
in this sort of simplest sense, it is um, it is helping you achieve like a goal or an objective, right? And that could be, it could be, there's lots of objectives that you might have. There's a few things that you need to create a great strategy, in my opinion. It is having a really great knowledge of the brand or the product or the person that is needing the strategy. So, what are their strengths? What are their kind of weaknesses? What are where is their potential, and where is their what don't we want to kind of like show on social? It's also understanding their problem. So it's understanding what do you want to achieve with this? Is it you want to gain more followers? Is it you want to encourage like more brand love, and who is it like you want to reach, and understanding those kind of pots of information. Then also listening to like what is happening on the app, what's happening on social, what's happening, the audience that you're trying to connect to, what are their problems, what are they kind of fed up of right now, what are they looking for. It's understanding as well, like technologically and culturally what is happening in the world, and then crafting like a plan based on kind of content, based on kind of messaging, based on how things like look and feel to help you achieve that objective. So putting the plan together, it's really about listening, it's about like uncovering insights, and then pulling out like kind of interesting kind of hooks and data that you might think, oh right, you know that community would love this, or that community is like is really crying out for this. I'll tell you like a great strategy, which is not necessarily social, but just something that comes to mind, is that I don't know if do you know Babes on Waves? It's like the community focus on women of color. It's like kind of like a bit of sort of business creative community. So it's always been quite about opportunities, business, helping people like land roles, helping people land opportunities. But obviously, like we've just had this like crazy time, like the pandemic, cost of living crisis. A lot of people are feeling kind of like quite mentally, sort of fragile, and maybe a bit burnt out. And so, Babes on Waves have like began offering like sort of wellness activities that include like saunas and steam baths and group activities. And
Nice.
that's like an amazing strategy to have, because it's like, it is not just a social strategy, but obviously they share that content online, but it's like, it's basically reacting to what the audience might need,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
saying, okay, these women are probably these independent businesses and creators are probably really in need of this, and we're creating something that appeals directly to their needs, and then we're sharing that on social so other people can see, like, oh, and be inspired by it. So that's like an example of like a really great kind of strategy. And I think with social and like marketing, you can just do so much. There's no kind of like limits on kind of what you can do, whether, the social activation could be content, or it can be something which I think the community can really engage with. So there's ways that you can kind of show up for the community you're looking for, trying to serve.
So I guess you're saying like the social strategy is more of like the overall plan, and then what you're actually posting like content wise is, it obviously fits into that strategy, but doesn't need to be, I guess, so meticulously planned out. You can be a little bit more reactive, like daily, for instance, but as long as it kind of fits your overall plan.
Yeah, totally. It's like you'll have like sort of key messages that you want to kind of implement,
Yeah.
and maybe like returning content series, or like a series that you kind of roll out over, like, I don't know, 8 weeks or 12 weeks or something, which kind of keeps enforcing that messaging that you're trying to kind of put across. But I
Mm.
think it's like a strategy is like it is the I guess like the sort of plan of action, which is based on insights, which then help you create those single posts that you end up doing. And with a strategy, generally, you'll always have some deck that you follow, for example, like a bit of
Yeah.
a rule of like what you say, what you do not say, what kind of content fits that strategy and which doesn't.
Hmm.
Um,
So you said you did digital strategy as well for a little bit. How does
mhm.
that differ from a social strategy, if at all?
Yeah, so social is part of digital. So
Hmm.
digital is basically how you exist and communicate online. So it's anything to do in the sort of digital sphere. So depending on what kind of company you work for, or what kind of space you exist in, it's basically anything in the digital realm. So that could be it could be how you show up on your websites. If you're an e-commerce platform, it could
Hmm.
be how you are running ads on Facebook Manager. It could be how you are putting out your newsletters, what content, how often, to whom. It could be, say you've got an app, like what is that interface? What does that all look like? How is the customer engaging? How do you keep the customer on the app? If you're a gaming platform, it's like, how do you encourage, what kind of messages are kind of like relayed? How do you get that community feeling like they are being kind of catered to? So it's basically kind of anything you can think of, like digital. It could be even, I don't know, let's say Line Bike, right? I'm a massive fan of Line Bikes. It is how those push messages appear on your phone.
Yeah.
To kind of remind you, oh, we exist, and you love riding them, and this is a great day to ride your bike. So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
basically, yeah, it's kind of like it covers all of those things. And obviously, you might have 3 platforms, you might have 7. It really depends on like the company, how big you are, how digital you are as well.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, so I guess you've had huge amount of experience with all these things, with the little different like roles that you've done along the way, which has sort of culminated. Culminated? Is that the word?
Oh, yeah.
Culminated in Creative Ally now.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about Creative Ally. Like, what exactly is it, and what is it that you specifically do?
Yeah, so Creative Ally is a talent agency for purpose-driven digital creators. So we manage a roster of 6 creators. So they're all sort of specialists in different social and environmental issues. So it could be, we look after Eliza Hatch, who founded Cheer Up Love, which is a platform which tackles misogyny, and we look after Lydia Bolton, who is an amazing sustainability creator. She's like a slow fashion designer. She upcycles waste fabrics and defected stock to create give new lease of life to existing items,
Mhm.
and raise awareness around kind of like fashion waste and
Mhm.
landfill. I founded Creative Ally in 2022 after working with creators, kind of like on the side of what I was doing. Everything I've kind of done has always kind of revolved around talent, or I've been drawn to talent
Yeah.
stuff. And when I was working as like a digital strategist, I just couldn't help myself. I would just message creators on Instagram, be like, "Hey, really love what you're doing. I love your voice. Love your kind of message. Do you fancy doing a strategy session? And I can give you some tips about how to reach a big audience, or connect with new fans." So that was like kind of like what I was doing on the side, and it got to a point where I was like managing a few creators whilst trying to work full time as a digital strategist. And I was like, you know what, I love the impact. I love working with brands because obviously they are, they want to make moments, like big cultural moments, and they have budget to help execute it. But with creators, I can really see, like, I can see firsthand the difference that they're making. And so I decided, after working with a few creators, I was like, I need to make this my full-time thing. And obviously I'd worked at Studio 71, and worked at their talent agency, Moxie. So, I had a really good understanding about how to work with talent, and, especially in this sort of space. And I had this idea of like working with purpose-driven creators, creators who, align with like my values, and that concentrate on amplifying messages around, key topics like sustainability or women's equality, or, inclusivity in the workplace, for example. And I set about like trying to kind of wrap that into a brand which would, help support my passion, but also, where I can make it like a real difference. So we have a roster of 6 talents. So I'm their talent manager, and that means working across, all aspects of each of these creators. I call them like brands.
Hmm.
So it means helping them really understand their true north star, their reason for doing things, what they want to kind of change. It is helping them create content strategies, and just sort of general brand strategies to enable audiences to really understand what they do, kind of get behind what they do, and sort of really plug into their community. It's also like working across talent partnerships. It's also helping them build other brands. So whether it be building brands or like IP. So it could be working with them on like a book proposal, or it could be working with them on like a new content series that they want to pitch to a say a production company, or or even a brand. So it's like quite like a all-encompassing job, really, but it enables me to kind of harness all those kind of skills that I've used working with brands, and like channel them into these amazing creators.
That's so amazing. And I love how you've just gone and done this completely yourself as well. Like, how did you find starting a business by yourself?
To be honest, I found it absolutely terrifying. I was completely terrified. And I have like a bit of a sort of story about this as well, because, I'm really, like I said, I'm really driven by purpose, and, I have really strong kind of like, morals. And um, I have felt at different points in my career that I am not living true to those values, or those
Mhm.
ways that I wish things had been done differently. And to live like a free life, like I really just want to do things the way that I would like. And I have always thought about like launching a business. It was something I've always wanted to do. I could see myself doing it, but I had this like major like imposter syndrome that just like was just all it was just awful. Like honestly, it was so bad that during like Zoom calls, like when it would come to my time to present, like I would faint on like a Zoom call, because I just felt so like out of my depth. And I think it's like part of like your background, right? So like, not when you're not merged around people that are doing the sort of similar things as you, it's easy for you to think that you're an outsider, or
Mhm.
maybe you're not doing as well as you'd hoped. And that imposter syndrome, honestly, like, it just it was terrible. Like I had all my business ready, I'd had planned, got the branding ready, got the website made, and had like my brand Bible already, and I was so I just couldn't press like publish on my LinkedIn post to announce it for honestly like 6 months. I was like, it really, prevented me from like moving forward. And I was just killing myself inside. Like, why can't I do this? Why can't I do this? And it took me like, honestly, like therapy, and like quite like an unusual form of therapy as well, called like map therapy, to like get over this particular issue. I'm like the biggest championer or biggest like supporter for everyone else, but when it comes to yourself, I think we have to be really critical.
Oh,
Shouldn't we?
yeah.
It's just terrible.
You've obviously put it out there now and it looks amazing. Like all of the branding I think is completely nailed. Like it's a really cool brand, and like on the socials you completely get it, what it's about, and all of that. Did you have a huge input into all of that branding side, or did you hire someone else in to do that?
So I brought somebody else in. So I work with an amazing designer called Abby Everett. So she
Oh,
runs
cool.
a studio called Everett. And we have worked together since I was at Studio 71. So I would bring her on to work on some of the talents like branding, some of our, I think she worked on some of our like podcast creatives as well, but just really amazing designer. And she really listened to, she does a really good job of like understanding like your personality and what you're trying to achieve with any kind of, design. And so when it came to work to creating my own, like I knew I needed to work with her. The I think the branding is like quite similar to like I guess my own sort of style in a way. This kind of I wanted it to feel really like I wanted it to feel like quite like digital and or digital focused, because obviously what we do, but also like really rooted in like the real world, which is basically like to emphasize our mission, or to like kind of highlight our mission of working with creators that are like leaving good or providing like interesting informative like resources, or opening up conversations about like topics that we don't hear enough of on social.
Yeah.
And also like using their platform in like a really responsible in a way, like this idea of kind of like good influence, and um using your platform responsibly, I think is like super important. So when it came to like the branding, I wanted like it to be like a mix of both, like digital first, but also rooted in real and humanity, because that is the really like the message of what we do.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say has been the best bits about being a founder?
Best bits about being a founder is I can, I really learned to like advocate for myself.
Mhm.
I can I can run my company how I feel is best. And yeah, I definitely would like more advice and connections that can help me do this. But in terms of, when I was talking earlier about my kind of like values and morals, I'm living my business out exactly how I would live my life out. And I think that is just is great. However the business ends up, like I know that I've treated people with respect, paid people properly and on time. Like I've done a very good job with everything that we've done. I feel very happy with everything, because I know that I've run it the way I wanted to. That's definitely like I'd say the key positives. Also as well, like choosing who you work with, right?
Yeah.
So working with like talents who have incredible missions, like that's like that's the dream really for me. Working with like nice people who like treat me with respect, and treat other people with respect, that's like that's amazing. And often I have worked in like different companies where we work with like a talent of some kind and they've not been very nice, and that goes down to like managers. And so it's about being able to curate that work life in a way which is kind and it's compassionate to all.
Definitely. I think that's so inspiring. Like a lot of people want to run their own business because they want to own their time and they want to, do things their way. And that's exactly what you're doing. And I like totally agree. Like, you get to pick and choose who you work with, and you're obviously picking the talents that you really, really believe in, and then obviously you'll do your best work because you really believe in them. So I think that's amazing. And let's go on the flip side. What do you think are the not so fun parts of being a founder?
So it's a I said earlier about like needing to know like what every kind of job did. I mean,
Mm.
there's some jobs that I just wish I didn't need to do or know about, So like there's so much kind of admin that goes into being a founder, and that really take away a little bit from like the joy for sure. I guess it's always being on as well. Like I even on the day of my wedding, I worked.
Oh my gosh, what?
I worked. I had to. But my legal wedding in London, I was emailing like an agency or brand, sorry, about something that needed to go live later that day. And on my way in the taxi to the to the registry office.
Wow.
So it's like you're always on, and that can be, sometimes that can feel a little bit like, so it's a lot, it weighs like quite heavy on you. But I'd say that's definitely like one of the hardest things is like being able to kind of switch off, because when you're a founder or you run your own thing, you'll know you can always perfect. You can
Mhm.
always perfect. You can always do more. There's never a limit. So at least when you work in a like 9 to 5, like the office will close at some point. Most of the time. So you kind of have to leave the office. Um,
Yeah.
but I think, yeah, it's hard to not want to keep, perfecting and doing more, but I know from like personal experience, like that is just the road to burnout. So I'm trying to be strict now, or stricter with my time.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end of our time together, and I really, really want to talk about Creatives Cymru, the supper club that you've started, which, am I right in saying it's kind of like a passion project for you?
Yeah, definitely passion project for now. But would love it if it kind of moved into something kind of bigger.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, obviously I invited you down, didn't I, to Creatives
I
Cymru?
know. I'm gutted I can't come to it, but hopefully the next one. Tell me how this idea even came about.
So I've always kind of felt as like a Welsh person that maybe I needed to kind of hide my identity a little bit. Like when I was growing up and I saw depictions of Welsh people in the media, they're often like a little bit like thick, or they were examples of like how not to be like in the media.
Mm.
I think
Mhm.
there was kind of two types. There was, you're either an amazing singer, like a choir singer or something, like Ella Jones or Charlotte Church, classical singer, or you were like, I don't know, on Jeremy Kyle or something. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So I've always felt I've really like I feel very passionate about being Welsh, but I didn't feel like I could really express that. It's felt like that for a really long time. And I met a wonderful woman called Dagmar Bennett through a mutual friend, and she was like, "Oh, I saw that you have the Welsh flag on your Instagram bio or something, and obviously I'm Welsh, and we were talking about doing something for creative people in London, and decided on putting together like a supper club series or like a network. It was more like the initial idea was like a networking event, but we decided on like a supper club because it meant that we can actually sort of sit down and like have like full on conversations. So
Yeah.
Creators Comedy Supper Club is a supper club series to connect and empower Welsh people within the creative industries in London, to really highlight our talent, to make us like more visible, to connect us, and to strengthen us as like a community. Like I said, I didn't have those representations, and when I came to London, creative industries is like nepotism, really, right? What feeds on nepotism. It's all about kind of like who you know. It's all about connection building,
Mhm.
and why not have those connections that can maybe like help you, land an opportunity or introduce you to a person, and as well as that, sort of celebrate our heritage and come together to sort of share stories and keep those like memories alive. We're on our second event now, and we have been holding it in a like bar restaurant called Top Cuvée, which I don't know if you know, it's actually Welsh owned.
Yes, I did see that. I think that's awesome.
So yeah, it's about like connecting people. We held like a bit of an open floor last time, so it's like it's a three course meal, so it's a proper sit down with like networking side. There's like kind of we encourage people to like really engage in conversation with people and telling have it holding like an open floor so people can share their experiences, and really like it's about helping create opportunities for one another. Being from Wales is very different to London,
Oh
and
yeah.
being like, yeah, whereabouts are you from again?
Swansea.
London, that's it. Yeah. So like, I'm from Barry, which is like, down the road, like very like working class town, not a lot of creativity kind of happening, not really
Mhm.
known. It is like they've got some quite sort of traditional sort of values. Um, but great people, and like coming to London is like quite daunting. It's very different. So what
Yeah. It is, and it's just like so much bigger, so many more people, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. I think it is a massive change,
totally.
definitely. I think moving to London, you could feel a little bit like alone, especially moving from so far away. If like none of your friends have done it, or not many of your friends, you probably don't know many people in London, and well, especially nowadays with a lot of work from home, like maybe people aren't building the kind of connections because you're not in the office as much anymore, and all of that. So I think it's really good to, one, just build connections and help you not feel alone, I guess, if you do in such a big city. But also, like you said, just building your network and helping each other out, because the creative industry is totally about who you know. And I mean, a lot of people on the podcast so far have said how they've got different jobs through people that they knew and other connections that they've made and all of that. So it's definitely beneficial to widen that out. And I think doing it as a supper club is just awesome. Like, who doesn't like to eat good food?
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like a lot of like even networking events are like an hour long, and actually like how much are you able to really share or connect with people over, you're running around a room trying to like, get to people who you think might be advantageous to you. So yeah, we just want to like, it's also about like just increasing visibility of like Welsh talent, because there's so much out there, and now like we're growing on our Instagram, and there's just so many cool people like just in lots of different jobs, and we just really want to like highlight them and showcase how amazing our country is, basically our
Yeah,
country and the people, and our talent, which all offer something quite like unique, and quite like you know authentically Welsh. Our Instagram is at Creatives Cymru Sub Club on Instagram. So yeah, please follow us on that. Especially if you're Welsh, have a connection to Wales, have lived in Wales. Doesn't have to be like Welsh born people. It's like for anybody that has a connection, because Wales is like it's diverse and has lots of different stories and histories. So anybody that has a connection is very, very welcome.
amazing. And speaking of following on socials, where can everyone find you and Creative Ally as well?
So me, you can find me just at Phie McKenzie. Very boring, but hopefully easy to remember on LinkedIn and Instagram. And then Creative Ally. So it's Creative Ally, Creative ALLY.online. That's our website. And then it is the same for our Instagram handle as well. So creativeally.online. So please give us a follow. Check out our talents. They are incredible and doing like really wonderful things. We also run workshops for purpose driven creators as well, so if you're like independent, feel free to check out our Instagram and our workshop offering, because we want to help level up as many creators as we can. So that's an option for you too.
Amazing. I might jump on one of those myself.
Yay, I'd love to host you, come on.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's literally been amazing, and I love everything you're doing, and I will definitely come to a supper club one day.
Yes, please do. Please do. Thank you so much for having me on. Honestly, it's so nice to chat.
I hope you enjoyed this episode with Phie. I found it so interesting to learn all about building a social media strategy, how she runs her talent agency, and Creatives Cymru's supper club. I hope to see a few of you fellow Welshies there at one point in the near future. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate if you leave a review, rate and subscribe. If you want to learn more, follow us on TikTok and Instagram at the Get to Know Podcast, and I'll catch you the same time next week for our final episode of the season. Can you believe it's the end of season 1 already? Anyway, I'm getting to know Head of Creative Jack Morgan. I'm so excited to be ending on this episode as it's really full of inspiring career advice and for anyone in the creative industry. Jack started off as a stylist and after discovering his niche for fashion and fitness, worked his way up to the level he is today, while still being under 30. If you're interested in a creative career, you won't want to miss this one.